Hello class and welcome to this Solar Jetman walkthrough right here on Video Games 101 by way of Let's Play with Brigands. I'm your instructor, Professor Brigands, and I mention this all the time, but we all have blind spots when it comes to games from back in the day, even with some of the more relatively popular titles sometimes. Solar Jetman is one such title for me. A game which maybe I played at a friend's house once or twice, but honestly I have no real recollection of ever playing this back in the day. Maybe lucky me based on the difficulty I encountered with this one when I finally picked it up for this class. Frustrating difficulty aside, it's a very fun and novel premise. Taking the old concept, or at least the controls of the Lunar Lander arcade game, and completely fleshing it out with upgrades, enemies, a story, more control over the vehicle. Yeah, it's just a good time, which has been a long time request here on Video Games 101 for good reason. But make no mistake, this is a very challenging game. This is still a rare developed title after all, although admittedly that does come with a bit of an asterisk, as Fluff is going to cover later. But how difficult is Solar Jetman? On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give Solar Jetman an 8 out of 10. On the frustration scale, this equates to writing a threatening letter to the developer, or once again, rare in this case, with that asterisk. Though maybe we should add a postscript to that letter and thank them that at least it's not a Battletoads level difficulty. Don't worry though, we've got plenty of tips designed to help get you through to the end. Blaze is going to cover the many items we can acquire and or buy, even advising you on how to spend your hard-earned money. Gary will have some tips on the final and only boss in this game. Fluff is going to share some interesting facts about this game and its developer, and he's going to point out all the warps you can take on top of that. And I'll be pointing out the most efficient routes through each planet to get you through to the next level with all the loot that you need. This is a surprisingly long game relative to most NES titles though, so let's run the intro and get into this Solar Jetman walkthrough right here on Video Games 101. Alright, just before we get into the game, let's take a quick look at the Briggs notes for this Solar Jetman walkthrough, the keys to beating this game. Number 1, always use your shields. We don't have the shields at the start of the game, but we'll get them very soon after beginning. The asterisk is because you can't use your shields when you're trying to tow something, so any other time that you're not towing, make sure you have those up. We'll talk about it. Spend your money wisely. Blaze will have some tips on how to do just that. Return to the mothership when your pod fuel gets low, your health essentially. And lastly, use your map to get your bearings, find out items which are close by to you so you can grab those. And we don't have the map from the start yet either, but we'll get it before too long, and we'll talk more about how to use that, or you can just follow along with us, obviously. But anyway, let's get started. And you're always treated to a nice scene where they show the planet, let you know the gravity, the diameter, to give you an idea of the pull you're going to have to deal with, and the size of the planet, but always a nice, unique piece of music as they introduce each planet there. As we're treated to a nice shot of us touching down on this first planet with our mothership, and then just climb into that jet pod right there as we take off, and take a look at the controls for Solar Jetman. You can change the direction you're facing by holding left or right to go counterclockwise or clockwise. Hold down the B button to go in that direction by using those thrusters. Hold down A to use your gun. You can pause the game with start, and then a few commands which are unique to certain weapons we don't have yet. But it'll take some time figuring out the controls for this game, unlike any other on the NES. But before you do anything else, we want to destroy our pod, because this will leave us in our jetpack, which is much more wieldy. And then you want to fly up here to the northwest, where we have a chance in this bonus stage to grab ourselves 10 gems. They always appear in this bonus stage in the exact same spot, so you can just follow along with what we're doing right here. They bounce back and forth for the first few, so you have to keep making hard turns left and right to make sure you hit them all. But yes, 10 gems, and if you get them all, they will give you double the points which you earn overall. Each one is worth 100 points on its own, so we have a chance of earning 1,000 plus another 1,000 should you collect all 10 gems. And this is going into our money down there. It looks like our point score, but it's essentially the currency of this game, so we can buy more stuff a little bit later. So after you've hopefully collected 2,000 on that minigame, I want to go back to the mothership with our jetpack, get ourselves a new jet pod. Basically alluded to this in the Briggs notes, but anytime you take too much damage, which is basically our fuel meter, you can return here for a topped off pod, and likewise if our pod gets destroyed. Running into walls will deplete your fuel faster, and taking a shot without the shields we're about to pick up will instantly destroy it. When we pick something up by way of our tractor beam, which automatically engages when we get close enough to items, it immediately affects the gravity, or better said, the physics in controlling our pod as we try to take it back to the mothership. It takes a little practice to get the hang of it as it swings back and forth, but just have to fly over the mothership. It will automatically disengage, be deposited, and the shield / frog legs blaze.
It's Blaze's best here in Item Sky. Maybe a bit of a cop-out on my part, but the shield gets the award for my item of the game here in Solar Jetman, as it keeps you alive. Nothing else to it. When your shields are up, collisions with surfaces and damage from projectiles, they're significantly reduced. Again, toggle this on and off by pressing down and up respectively, albeit counterintuitively. And as the Briggs notes say, make sure you have this up whenever you're not towing anything.
Thank you, Blaze. Can't argue with that designation of item of the game here in Solar Jetman for the shields one bit. After we grab the shield and engage it, we want to grab this gem, again pushing up to disengage the shields when you get close. Note that you can, this is just some money right there. Blaze will talk more about the items we can pick up in a little bit, but yeah, note that you can engage the shield whenever you want while you're towing something, just in case you're about to take a hit. Maybe a bullet is about to hit you, you're about to hit a wall, and just don't want to take the full damage. Just tap down to go ahead and put the shields up and drop whatever you're towing. You can go back and pick it up once again. You'll see that little kind of wormhole, which it would not let us go into. That is because we have not yet collected enough fuel. One of the main objectives on every stage, aside from collecting all of the pieces of the Golden Warpship, is to get enough fuel for your ship. So it's got to pick up the fuel cell that we got right here and tow it back. This is, again, very heavy. So, especially when it's swinging left and right like that. It's a very nuanced game in terms of the controls. Once we have an upgrade to our boosters, everything becomes much more manageable, so I'm looking forward to that before too long. But here on this first stage, a bit of a softball, only need the one fuel cell to go ahead and leave the planet. And no reason not to go back into the mothership to get your health topped off there. Again, I use fuel and health synonymously, so forgive me, but just so you know. And forgot to put the shields up there, forgetting the first Briggs note. Very important, but now that we've collected that fuel cell right there, the wormhole which we were not able to go into earlier is now available to us. You got to drop your shields to go inside of any wormholes in this game. So that's what we do to arrive in a special area at the end of every stage, every planet here in Solar Jetman, which is always animated and laid out differently, but yeah, there is always a piece of the Golden Warpship which is not golden. Maybe that's just the housing for it. Bit of a chest there, I guess, but this is very heavy. And without the boosters, which we, again, don't have yet, you really need to make sure this thing is at a dead stop before you try towing it. You can, as we just try getting it in this circle here, you can disengage, you know, put up those shields, and then if you fly into it from, say in this case, the bottom left, and we're going top right to get it into that circle right there, you can kind of use that momentum that you already have going into it to drop it in there, which we'll do a little bit later, more often. But after you deposit the piece of the Golden Warpship, go ahead and get your jet pod destroyed, because there is one more little area known as the Cyber Zone at the end of every stage, where again the objective is to collect 10 gems, but it's a lot easier to maneuver without the jet pod. So the 10 gems to collect are always laid out in the exact same way in these cyber zones, so just follow my track here. And Fluff, I'm told there was a warp on that first stage. Can you show it to us?
Just like in Rare's Battletoads, there are a number of warps here in Solar Jetman which you can take to skip ahead multiple levels. To access the warp in the first stage, you need to circle counterclockwise from your ship to the fuel area and destroy this little green alien before it disappears roughly 15 seconds or so after beginning the stage. It's extremely difficult to get here in time, but if you do, and destroy him before he disappears, a wormhole will appear, which will send you straight to Stage 7. It's not recommended, however, because unlike in Battletoads, you miss out on a number of resources and upgrades, making the remainder of the game much more difficult. I'll point out the next warp once we get to it, but there you go.
Thank you, Fluff. And then just return to your mothership and then take off. And we're coming up on our first shop, so with an overview on what we can buy, here's Blaze.
Alright, we've arrived at the first of 6 stores you can hit here in Solar Jetman, assuming you don't do any warping, of course. More items will become available to us in subsequent stores, but at the moment we have a smaller pool to choose from. Specifically, we first have homing missiles. These slow-moving secondary weapons are homing pretty much in name only. I mean, sure, they do an inefficient job of vaguely tracking the nearest target, but if the target moves even slightly, there's little to no chance these missiles will make contact. For what it's worth, you can fire out 4 of these at a time, and each shot consumes half of one of the 28 bars, meaning you can fire up to 56 of these useless weapons. It's worth mentioning at this point that if you don't lose your pod while one of these secondary/special weapons is equipped, returning to the mothership will top off your ammo for that weapon, even if you went through the entire ammo supply. It doesn't cost you an extra use of that item either, just in case you maybe bought more than one in your pool, but just something to keep in mind. Next we have the time bombs. You can drop 7 of these total with a full ammo bar, and these can destroy the limpet cannons, meaning those little fixed turrets which fire bullets at you, and it can do this even if they're closed, but it's somewhat difficult to navigate close enough to a turret to safely drop one, and they're not worth using on much else, so meh. These have a 5-second fuse for what it's worth. Next, the titanium bullet pack is a slight upgrade to your bullets when you have these equipped, causing the bullets to grow larger when they get enough distance from your ship. Not all that useful for those who pride themselves on their accuracy. Next, the aptly named efficient engines give you more time while you're engaging your thruster before fuel is consumed. Generally, damage is more of a threat to your fuel gauge though, rather than just flying around, and spare ships are relatively available later on in the game when it gets more difficult for what it's worth. Lastly, we have the mapping device. Don't waste your money on this as we'll get it for free in the next level, but yeah, this shows your current location on the map. It doesn't show the entire map, but rather a zoomed in area you're currently in. This becomes more useful when we get a better version of this later, but there you are, the early items you can buy. Right now you probably have somewhere between $2,000 and $5,000 or so I recommend sitting on it for now for better items and upgrades later on.
Exactly what we're doing, thank you, Blaze. First things first, here on the second planet, immediately hit the thrusters and aim up and right as you leave the mothership. You have a very limited window to hit a wormhole, which we just went through, which will take us to the inside of this planet where we are right now, where there's some loot to grab. It's very easy to overshoot, meaning going too high over that wormhole before it disappears, so I like to get some speed and just kind of maintain my course to hit it as you saw us do. Once inside, we want to head east and northeast to grab a very valuable treasure chest. And the annoying part is that the gravity is stronger on this planet than the last one. It's actually 3 times stronger on this planet versus the 8 which we had on the first planet. It's 24 here, so 24 gravity units, if you will. But getting the loot inside of the planet is amongst the most difficult flying you'll have in the game, because we're about to get the boosters, which will make maneuvering and just getting around a whole lot easier here in Solar Jetman, but the boosters are on the outside of the planet, and we wouldn't have time to pick up the boosters first and still make this very temporary wormhole, or whatever you want to call it, whatever. It's a portal to the inside of the planet. So instead we need to use that technique which I was basically referring to a bit earlier, where you build up a head of steam, lining up your pod beneath that wormhole back to the ship where we'll be depositing it, just automatically, but You can actually push it as well. You can see right there if you get beneath it and lower your shield a bit earlier, allows you to push it. But right there, 4,800. Just about doubled our money total. So a very valuable chest right there. If you need some health, it's off screen. It's actually on the other side of this rock, and you got a super gravitational pull enemy right there. But if you shoot down, and wow, we lined that up on the first shot right there. That was actually just an accident, but there is a fuel tank, which we'll bring in Blaze to talk about the items in just a second. But yeah, there's a fuel tank on the other side, more on the outer part of this planet, and we actually shot through the wall to hit that tank down there, and just serendipitously topped off our health. Except for what it's worth, right around that extra gravity pulling enemy that you saw right there. But all total, there are a couple chests, a gem, and a radioactive to pick up, and let's bring in Blaze to talk more about what all these things are. Blaze?
Alright, the majority of items you'll find on a planet are treasures, which earn you money which you can redeem for better equipment. The first two are specific to defeating enemies, will leave behind either a small chest or a star, worth $25 or $50 a piece if you shoot them or fly into them. Other than that, we have items you need to pick up with your tractor beam and deliver to your ship either directly or by wormhole. These include crystals, either blue or orange, which are worth $500. Collecting 10 will earn you an extra life, by the way. Radioactives, which are worth $750 a piece. Arguably my favorite named item in the fancy alien items, which are worth a cool grand. And finally, the chest, or the big chest I should say, which is heavier than all of the rest of these items and contains random artifacts which are worth various amounts of money, anywhere from $1, yes, $1, to a few $1,000s. Aside from treasures, but still very worth mentioning, you have fuel cells, which are heavier than most of the treasures in the game and are required to leave the stage. Fuel tanks, which top off your fuel/health when you shoot one. And finally the spare pod, which is a fresh pod which you can redeem once you're in your spacesuit and jetpack to get you back on the pod.
Thank you, Blaze. I wouldn't normally go out of my way to collect all of the stuff which is in the center here just because, I can't wait to get those boosters. But if you collect enough money, which is 25,000 points/dollars, that number in the bottom right, before level 4, then you can buy yourself the best pod upgrade in the game. And just a bit earlier than you probably would normally be able to. You have to just ace every single cyber zone, getting the full 2,000 there, as well as getting a lot of the treasures in these first 3 planets. And then you can buy that upgraded ship a little bit earlier than you would probably normally be able to, or the game would expect you to be able to. Still, they offer it to you in the next shop, which we come to ahead of that 4th planet. But just wanted to mention that if you are a little low on health and just want to go ahead and exit this inner area, I think the only thing which we still need to grab is the radioactive, which I believe is just up here. There it is, in that corner. But yes, if you have lost your pod, then you can just use your jetpack and fly into the wormhole we've been depositing all of these treasures into, and that will take you immediately back to the warp ship. That's always the case here in Solar Jetman. If you are down to your jetpack, just not to be confused with the jet pod, which we're in right now, then yeah, just go ahead and fly into any wormhole, the closest one to you, and you'll get a brand new pod just like that. Never want to spend too much time outside of your pod, though. Obviously, when you're down to that jetpack, you want to make it a point to find the closest wormhole as quickly as possible, because not only can we not tow anything, so get anything done when we don't have our pod, when we're just in the jetpack, but we are exceedingly vulnerable to all kinds of damage. If we take a bullet in our jetpack, we are immediately dead, and then we lose our first life, essentially. You can lose all the pods you want, but until you eat into that first life, that's when it becomes a problem. So 750 for the radioactive, just as Blaze mentioned. So now we're going to destroy the pod so we can get back to our mothership. Never bullet when you need one. And they'll give you the option to, in addition to explore, take off or apply some weapons which you have already bought at the store. In that case, if you already have some items or if you have the ability to leave the planet. But can't do that until we have enough fuel, obviously, and we have the piece of the Golden Warpship, excuse me. I was about to say Golden Jetpack. Not gold, though. Not sure where the name comes from, but once you come out of the inside of the planet, you can go down just southwest of the mothership to grab yourself your first fuel cell. Need more than one this time to leave the planet. But after you bank that, just hug this plateau here to the left and come down here to pick up the very Metroid-looking item. Looks like something Samus would pick up right down there. And the boosters. Let's take these back to the ship, and immediately the game will become much more manageable once we get these. But Blaze, how about these boosters?
The boosters give your pod extra thrust at the expense of greater fuel consumption when engaged. To temporarily engage the boosters, hold select while you push B to notice a massive boost to your thrust by way of those boosters. Just the thing you need to tow the heavier items against the greater gravity of certain planets. Not to mention act as a safety net when you find yourself hurtling out of control with too much velocity in a direction you do not want to go.
Thank you, Blaze. And you'll see that the little fire, the thruster fire, which comes out of the bottom of our pod, is a bit thicker when we're holding down that select button. Watch out for those turrets right there. They don't have any means of defending themselves on the top, so that's where we come in from. And note that you can shoot those little chests, which Blaze mentioned, the stars as well. But coming to the right this time to grab this fuel cell, and you can see what a difference these boosters make. Just for getting around, so much easier, offsetting the weight of certain items which we're trying to return to the ship. Need one more fuel cell here on the second planet. Note that they only tell you that you need additional fuel when you go ahead and deposit fuel cells by way of a wormhole. But once you drop in the final fuel cell to your ship, it'll tell you have enough fuel to leave the planet. Just as it did on that first planet when we picked up the first one. Very cute though, the tiny chest versus the big one, just the matching set right there. Come all the way to the right to grab yourself another chest. So much easier with this upgraded booster. And it's nice they give it to you relatively early on in the game. Some of the planets will have far greater gravity. It's going to get kind of ridiculous in some of the later stages in the game, but it jumps around a lot. Easter Island heads. Worth $24.53. We will take that happily. Top off our fuel. The rest of this planet is a bit more straightforward. We're going to head all the way to the left and then descend where we can get ourselves a crystal and then some more fuel, both of which are close to another wormhole to deposit them a bit below there. And again, note that the small blue orbs will suck you in with greater gravity, and the larger orange orbs will actually push you away, so a little tricky when they put two of these right next to one another. I mean, it's just going to suck you into the higher gravity blue orb, but yeah, if we want to grab that gem down there, we got to destroy that orange orb, giving it a few shots from our basic turret right there. Let's just drop this down here into the wormhole I referenced a moment ago. Right there. And this might be an instance... There we go. I was going to say maybe we need to come in from the bottom left, but just kind of spear it, but that worked out. So let's grab ourselves the fuel cell now. Just up a bit and ultimately to the left. And then Blaze mentioned to skip buying the map because we could get it for free in this stage, so we'll grab that as soon as we deposit this fuel cell down here in the wormhole. Yeah, it takes a lot of getting used to, but it's a very fun premise in terms of the gameplay once you get it sorted out. Sometimes just try to force it in there, but There we go. They're pretty generous with the hitbox, but as mentioned, they will let you know when you have collected enough fuel, 3 for 3 on this planet. So let's descend deeper to pick up those navigators / the mapping device, which Blaze mentioned in that first shop, but we're getting it for free, saving ourselves 1,500 space credits. Almost looks like something out of Metroid as well, just a bit more blown up. So I might not be able to get this back to the wormhole without losing my pod, but fortunately there is our first replacement ship just to the right of where we are right now. So, and you'll note that once you disengage whatever you're towing with your shield, it will stay right in place. Thankfully the gravity doesn't apply to items in this game, they just stick right there. And here's our replacement pod. Considering just shooting this thing out, yeah, it's just so much easier to control your character when they're in the jetpack versus the pod, but again, you're leaving the door open to disaster without the shields, which you have in your pod. Not just the actual shields, but the amount of damage which you can take in the pod. Shields or no versus how much you can take. With the jetpack, we just kind of use the swinging to our advantage to get that into the ship, and now we can pause, hit select, and you're treated to a very nice piece of music, by the way, from Mr. David Wise, who I'm sure Fluff will mention a bit later. Rare's sole composer for many years. Learned that in one of our recent, might have been Wizards and Warriors, I'm not sure, but one of the Rare titles which we covered within the last few months or a year. You can check that out by the playlist in the description. But yes, you'll note that that map, anytime you want to bring it up, as Blaze mentioned, will show our position on that little section of the map. And it is just a section, it's not the entire planet, just a kind of zoomed in quarter or so relative to where you are on the map. You can also just follow along, as again, we're showing you the most efficient route. This is one of the few planets which has a bonus fuel cell for what it's worth. We don't need that one, but there it is for what it's worth. I'm going to top off with a new pod since we're down here. And now the only thing left to do is hate those enemies, the kind of snake / shrimp looking enemies right there. And these two anti-gravity devices right here forcing us away. And you'll note in the case of hitting that fuel tank which we hit in the from the center of this planet that you can actually get away with hitting things which are off the screen. Those bullets just keep on going for what it's worth. But in we go to get the Golden Warpship piece for this second planet. And this one's pretty straightforward. Just disarm all the guns as you descend down to make the return trip once we're going to be towing that piece much safer. There's no reason to keep those guns in operation unless you just fancy a very dangerous challenge as you're trying to tow that back up. You can see the relative lack of damage which we're taking. Running into the walls and certainly taking the occasional bullet to our ship with the shield up. Bullets still do more damage than running into a wall for the most part, shield or no shield, but it's all significantly diminished the impact it has on our pod. Just trying to get this piece up here. There we go. That worked out. It's more like a circus tent when we're towing it up like that. That looks more like a fish at the moment, but once again, before we jump into the wormhole, which will take us to the end of stage Cyber Zone, I want to go ahead and destroy our pod. It's optional, but again, it's just a lot easier to make these corners when you're in your jetpack versus the pod. And they just change out the background, but again, the locations of the gems are always the same, so you can just do kind of a figure 8. And if you miss it the first pass, you can just hit it on the next pass. That's the beauty of the figure 8 right there. Kind of similar formation as I think I recommended on some of the treasure rooms in our recent class on Gauntlet, actually. But anyway, collecting all those 10 gems gives us the bonus right there at the end, 2,000. So we're in pretty good shape as we're leaving the second planet. Just about 7,500 bucks/points shy of being able to earn ourselves that significant pod upgrade which I was talking about. And Blaze will mention once we get to the, once we beat this next stage and we get to that next shop. But the third planet, Omebrew? How do you want to pronounce that? Gravity 16, so this is right dead center between the gravities of the first two planets. And they always give you the password. And I will credit Rare with this. The password is just letter specific to your score going into the planet, whatever items you've bought to that point. They do a very good job with that, keeping track of your progress right there. And it's not this crazy string of characters you need to input. I think it's only 12 characters, so. So the first thing we want to do here on the third planet, which is gratifyingly much more straightforward than that last level, is to hug the top of the screen, going to the right to slip over a very high plateau here, and then grabbing some treasure to tow back to the ship. I guess one of those, what Blaze call it? It's the official name, but it makes me laugh too, the rare alien items or something. There's no better way to say, I don't know what the heck this is, than just calling it rare alien items. They're valuable. We're picking up Easter Island heads, after all. Just, that looks like a little circus tent as well, actually. Fancy alien items, excuse me. Very rare. Spoken like a man who has no idea what those are, but after we grab that, it's actually relatively linear as you go into the corridor beneath the surface to the right of your mothership. Below ground, it basically all takes place in 4 smaller chambers, which all connect to one another by way of some tight corridors. We also have spiky, crystal-lined walls to contend with for the first time, and these tend to deal a bit more damage than just the more smoother rock surfaces we've been dealing with, so just keep that in mind. Definitely have those shields up. Shields up and boosters to minimize the damage you take, well, the contact you make, certainly in the case of the boosters. There's actually a hidden warp right here in the center of where all these enemies are circling about. And there's a reason I'm destroying them, actually multiple reasons I'm destroying them, but Fluff, how about the warp here in the third planet?
Alright, our second opportunity to warp ahead is here in this third level. From the start, drop down into the hole directly to the right of your mothership and hug the ceiling as you push right. You'll quickly find a ring of enemies circling around. If you come in with enough pace, you'll be perfectly timed to slip in the opening, and right in the middle of that ring, there's an invisible wormhole. Don't kill any of these enemies, by the way, or the wormhole will cease to exist, which, incidentally, is a great way to avoid it if you're playing through like the professor is. Once you go through the wormhole, though, there's a large ship shooting at you, which you can just slip by to the right, and then you'll find 3 additional wormholes, but this time they're visible. Going left to right, these will warp you to levels 5, 6, and 7.
Thanks, Fluff. And we just got ourselves an English phone box. A little Doctor Who reference right there, perhaps, or just, I don't know. It's as random as Easter Island heads, I suppose. Yeah, once again, we are playing through this game in full and trying to maximize our loot to hopefully make a big purchase again at the end of this level. Aside from fuel and the Golden Warpship piece, it's just a bunch of treasure in different forms to deposit in one of a couple wormholes in either the top right or lower left chambers. And let's grab this gem here, just trying to inch out enough money to hit that 25,000 before all is said and done here. And to get between the chambers, in some cases there are some very tight little corridors here. And again, because we can't use our shields when we're towing something, that makes that a little tricky, but yeah, if you just manage your height, your speed, trajectory well, then you can get there with taking relatively little damage. That worked out pretty well. Always let you know more crystals necessary for getting a bonus life. How many more of those 10? They won't tell you if you want to keep track for yourself, but probably won't be going after too many more crystals after we go ahead and make our big purchase here, just because there's enough money to earn for other things which we might need moving forward, but that is the big purchase. That wasn't great. There is a replacement ship for us not too far from here, thankfully. Just plan on leaving this around the warp. There she is. But yeah, we'll still be pointing out the locations of... Just remind me of something out of Mega Man for some reason, I don't know. Maybe just the tips of those. They certainly had those in the first Mega Man, and they make an appearance every now and then, but... See if we can't get this. I think we have enough clearance with that ceiling there to be able to make a deposit here. We've got some enemies trying to make things interesting for us. Those numbers seem to have no bearing on anything, but there you go, another 2453. But yes, just to finish that thought, I'll still be pointing out all of the different areas where you can pick up every treasure on every planet moving forward. Just won't be going out of our way to grab everything in this game because it's just not necessary. There's no incentive for collecting every single piece of treasure on every map in this game. Still need some more fuel. So we carry on, this time going south and then ultimately west through another adjoining section, but this time we can use our shield, obviously. And this ship takes quite a few hits from the rear, only place it's vulnerable. Not really worth it in terms of money. I think a big ship like that would pay out a bit better than taking out one of the smaller enemies, but not the case. Getting smacked around here, there is a fuel tank in the northwest section of this chamber, so might just drop this en route to that last wormhole, and then stop off and grab this. As Blaze mentioned, just to give it a shot. And that's how we mysteriously and magically got our health back on that first, or that last level, I should say. Still pretty proud of that shot, even though I had nothing to do with it. It just kind of worked out for me. Alright, but let's spear this one. And then boost it back up to that wormhole. Note that these seemingly random enemies which fly in sometimes are typically native to the areas in which they fly in. Some parts of the planet will not feature any of those enemies even if you wait around for a while. Others, much more annoying, especially if you're trying to tow something to a wormhole or back to your ship. And you've got a bit of a crossfire to deal with right there. As I resist the urge to sing the classic 90s crossfire jingle right there. But down here in kind of the final chamber, where we'll have a radioactive to pick up. And this radioactive will just about get us there with the 2,000 we can expect from the cyber zone. Typically an easy 2,000 to pick up all 10 crystals on that one if you know what you're doing. Sometimes just want to slow things down, disengage whatever you're towing, catch your breath. So we take this down to the southwestmost corner. Using that boost kind of does your head in sometimes. Certainly does my head in when I'm trying to account for the gravity in combination with whatever I am towing in that moment. And here is the final fuel which we need to collect. To to leave this planet. So much more fun with the booster. Probably already said that, but just it adds so much to the gameplay when you have that extra element of control over your pod. So we need 296 space bucks. So let's go ahead and grab this crystal right here. This gem to get us over the hump and just about ensure that we can afford, assuming we don't biff up the cyber zone, that we can afford ourselves that massive upgrade for our pod, which Blaze will talk about once we get to that shop. And there is a replacement pod in the southwest corner of this chamber for what it's worth. Might go ahead and top ourselves off. Try to take out this ship here. This might force our hand. Kind of reminds me of one of the ships in the battleship-themed minigame from Space Quest V, for those in the know. Maybe the Starship? I forget the names, but yeah, forced our hand. So yeah, one bullet at this point will kill us, so in the interest of not losing our first life, grab ourselves the pod. It's always nice to play a bit fast and loose once you got that brand new pod with a full complement of fuel. But I'm not done with you. There you go. It's not worth it. Not worth the squeeze. But to get to the Golden Warpship wormhole, let's go to the west side of this little chamber here. Cut through. And in the southwest corner, there you go. And this room has a couple needlessly dangerous paths if you want to go up or right from the start, so instead we're going to go up and right basically through the middle, taking out the big ship to make things easier. Once again shooting it in the rear as we just did. And grab the piece, the circus tent, chest, then fly it back down to where we just came from. Again, zero reason to go up or right, just turrets and just a bad idea. Mind the bullets coming in from the top, but that worked out. Got our third piece of the delicious apricot fish we're putting together there, the grilled fish. And then once again, to ensure that we hit our 2,000 perfect run of this cyber zone, gonna crash our pod and go in with just the pack. And this is a big one we need to ace to hit that threshold. A bunch of spirits are coming out of there, but I guess it's just we're doing like a super warp. I guess that's the idea in the cyber zone. Try skipping the figure 8 this time. See if it is appreciably faster. We like to test our own theories here on Video Games 101. Yeah. Just like that figure 8, so you have 2 chances of hitting that one at full speed should you miss it, but not a big difference. Regardless, and more importantly, we got ourselves the 25,000 Blaze. How about this next shop?
Alright, new shop, new items, beginning with anti-gravity. Honestly, I haven't noticed a huge difference with this equipped versus not. In theory, it reverses the gravity like the water physics you're about to experience, but meh. Next, we have the multi-warhead missiles. Wow, a slightly better version of an already crappy item? These are exactly the same as the homing items, but they can hit multiple targets before they disappear. Of course, no one has ever confirmed this because of how terrible they are at homing, so pass, yeah, but for what it's worth, you get 14 uses of this weapon. Next are the super shields. I can't actually confirm that these offer better protection, but I do know that they shred enemies or projectiles which touch it much more efficiently and effectively than your normal shields, which in turn can help mitigate subsequent damage you'd take otherwise, so not a bad item for $500. Lastly are the 2 jet pod upgrades. If you've been playing efficiently, grabbing every treasure there is to get, nailing all the bonus rounds, and defeating some of the enemies you come across, then you might just have 25k, in which you should absolutely buy the best ship in the game, the Italian Racing Jet Pod, or IRJ, as I like to call it. Each upgraded pod has better engines, handling, and guns, with the IRJ being superior to the Nippon Sports Jet Pod. Additionally, both jet pod upgrades allow you to warp into the small wormholes, which you've previously only been able to drop items through, or jump back to the mothership if you've lost your pod. On top of that, the IRJ allows you to tow the extra ships you'll find, as well as fuel tanks, so that they'll be there on demand should you need one. If you can't afford the IRJ yet, you can grab the Nippon Sports Jet Pad for 10k and a few anti-gravity items for 1,000 each, as they give you a little under 2 minutes of reverse gravity, which makes towing heavier things easier. I guess that's the main distinction there with the anti-gravity items, but don't worry, by the way, you'll have another opportunity to purchase the IRJ ahead of Planet 8.
Thank you, Blaze. Yes, Blaze said we won't get a chance to purchase that again for several levels, so we'd be fools to skip it here, as nice as a few anti-gravity items would be to have in our inventory for just towing a little bit more easily, but definitely not worth the cost of delaying a permanent upgrade and buying the Italian Racing Jet Pod, the IRJ. But yeah, grabbing the fuel cell right here, just follow along. We have our first water level as well, and there's a ship replacement up there as well for what it's worth. And yeah, if we get our pod destroyed, doesn't matter. Every subsequent pod we pick up, every time we leave the ship, no matter what happens, we will always have the IRJ moving forward, unless there's a game over, obviously, but just use your password in that case. But yeah, with the water level, once you go into the water, it reverses the gravity, forcing you up to the surface rather than down to the ground. It takes a while to wrap your head around it, I guess, but it's not that big of a deal. Perfect. So as Blaze also mentioned, now that we have an upgraded pod, doesn't matter which one you bought, you can jump between these wormholes. I like to bring up the map every now and then just to get my bearings and make sure I know where I am before I warp, and sometimes where I'm coming out post-warp. But now that we also have the best pod in the game, and I kind of alluded to this, we can skip some of the lower value treasures. We can afford to do that. Make this a bit more efficient moving forward. Even if you haven't bought the best pod in your game and you bought the sports jet pod instead, there will still be more than enough loot to hit that 25k before we hit the level which has it. I think it's just before level 8. So as mentioned, yeah, we'll be focusing on the higher value loot moving forward, which will be more than enough for you. There's a couple chests on this level which are worth a combined 6+ grand alone. Much better than slumming it for some gems. Radioactives can still be worth it if they're not too far out of our way, so let's go grab one northeast of here. And this is a kind of an annoying little cut through. It seems spacious enough, but you can see, even if you hit that target just right in terms of your trajectory, you can still get smacked around a little bit, which is especially annoying when we're trying to get out of here with the radioactive. Might try to get this just outside here and then let go. Alright, well that worked out. Sometimes if you can swing it far enough to the left, just kind of have it at that opening, engage your shields, go through, and then grab it from the other side, you can save yourself some damage. But 750 right there. We're getting pretty beat up, so let's go west here and grab ourselves a replacement pod, which is just to the left. Thankfully. We're getting smacked around right up top. Showed that on the way in. Showed it not knowing if we would have to go back and grab it ourselves. Just wanted to point out that it was there and then ended up needing it ourselves. Always how it goes, but... So a little southeast from the wormhole up there. You can come down here and take out these super gravity spheres. And then grab ourselves this chest, which is worth a little over 1,000. So not too shabby. Definitely worth the effort of taking it just up to... And yeah, that's the problem though, is this is one of those chambers where you have these very frustrating snake-ish enemies. And as soon as you take them out, a couple more will be ready to take their places on top of that. Much prefer these slower moving little pods. So just best advice is to have that thumb ready to press down on that down button on the D-pad just to get that shield up. Quick reflexes when you see a bullet coming at you with some pace. And you'll see we can warp through there when we're towing something. That's kind of the annoying bit. When you have your shield up, you can't warp, but obviously when you're towing something, robot kit. It's kind of jammed a robot in there for $12.87. But now, I'm going to actually bounce back through here to grab ourselves the next fuel cell. And as we do that, let's go to Fluff. As I'm told, Fluff, there's a warp on this stage, but it's incredibly difficult to hit. What do you got?
That's right, Professor. You have about 18 seconds from the start to quickly descend beneath the surface and follow the path to the right, where just beyond the first fuel cell, a path opens up below you, and another one of those green aliens temporarily exists until around that 18-second mark. I recommend firing before you can even see the alien like shown, as that might be the only way you can get down there in time. This creates a warp, which creates the biggest jump in the game, taking you straight to level 11.
Thank you, Fluff. Yeah, I'd feel a lot better about warping ahead now that I had the best pod in the game. But again, we're hitting every level, just showing you all the warps. For what it's worth, we have an interesting one coming up, actually, as we're still trying to collect all the fuel which we need to exit Corso Quero, I believe was the name of this planet. Quero? I don't know. I have trouble pronouncing a lot of things correctly. I'm not going to probably nail the pronunciation of a random planet which Rare made up decades ago. Well, I say Rare again. We're going to bring in Fluff to address the asterisk, which I keep adding on, but popping in this one here to grab ourselves a very useful, if I can grab it in time actually, fuel tank, which is in the bottom right of this area here. Right there. Feeling better now. This was just southeast of that first wormhole which we came upon, and then we had that $1,200 chest a bit more south of right here, but jumping back into the warp. Note that the velocity which you enter a warp with will be shown when you come out of it on the other side. Oh, I hate these guys. It's just nasty as soon as you come out of the warp right there. But yeah, this is the best way to deliver this fuel, or the most efficient way, I should say. And you'll find that the warps they just go in order from one spot to the next. It's always in the same order, and there's one of the fancy alien items right there, but it's just too dangerous with all the snakes. So if we can actually, get the fuel and then deposit it with the relative safety of this warp, much better. And now we have enough fuel to leave the planet, but first, and we're actually in the right spot, we just happen to pop out in the right warp area here, but again, they go in order every single time, so yeah, one will take you to the next one, and then the third one, and then back to one, back to two, back to three, and so on. They don't just randomly pop you out in a different spot each time for what it's worth, but in the northwest area of this chamber, we have one of the most valuable chests in the game. This is nearly $5,000 worth of, I don't know, Easter Island heads, whatever it is, but just have to worry about those snakes guarding that immediate area. But once you get it up here, a little quieter. Let's see what's inside. Ooh, a pile of gems for $48.72. Very tasty. We'll take that all day. Alright, so the exit to the Golden Warpship piece is left at this junction, but we want to go to the right as there is a spare ship which we can actually pick up since we've got the IRJ, as Blaze calls it. Still got to take off the shield, so it's kind of Kind of defeats the purpose a little bit, you know, because you have that replacement ship for when you get destroyed, and this makes it a lot easier to become destroyed, but, you know, that state of being destroyed, become destroyed. It's a little funky, though. Being underwater and towing something, it's a new experience here in Solar Jetman, but if we can tow this thing a little bit closer to the wormhole, why not? If nothing else, we can show off how difficult it is to tow anything underwater, and kind of how impractical it is to tow extra ships, but it's the luxury vehicle of this game. You're not going to use all the features, some nice to haves, but yeah, strictly speaking, not necessary, a lot of it, but just work your way through this linear area until we get into a more open chamber, and then the exit will be in the top left. And I don't know about you, class, but I am ready to leave Corso Quero. Very much ready. And these are always on a set path, so they'll just hit their track and then turn around and leave their vulnerable side to us. Slow and steady. And then the gravity just pulls us in. So this is one of the more difficult Golden Warpship piece rooms, as we have our first, I think it's our first lasers here in Solar Jetman. Cannot be destroyed through conventional means. We need some serious secondary weaponry to take those down. A single shot will destroy you when your shield is not up, obviously, which makes towing this warp ship piece especially dangerous. Try to mitigate as many of these secondary threats as possible in the form of the bullet turrets, but thankfully they're spaced out in such a way that you can gap them without too much issue. There's a much nastier one later on in the game, which we'll talk about. Oof. That's a gimme. If we had our ship destroyed, we'd just have to jump back through this little area here and go back to our ship and try again. We wouldn't lose a life, but it would be awfully annoying, so now we're happy to destroy our pod in an effort to ace this cyber zone once again. Grab an extra 2,000 for moving forward, and that is a... oof. It is a candy cane nightmare right here. That's how I describe that, but it's a lot of pink. You want to try to make it so you don't bang your head there, which slows down your upward thrust to get to the remaining 2 or 3 gems there. Federation of Space Loonies. Do we have to pay royalties or some sort of membership fee to maintain our status? When you don't clear out the planet, as we didn't do there, of every last treasure, they give you the option to continue to explore if you like. No incentive though, so we're blasting off. Always reminded me of, I don't know, something out of Toe Jam and Earl, or maybe just Battletoads, I guess. I don't know. Speaking of space set games, certainly from Rare in the latter's case, but yeah, I don't know. Something about the terrain felt very Toe Jam and Earl. But we are moving on now to the 5th planet overall. Baki. Stronger gravity than we've had to deal with at this point. But yeah, the 5th planet is gratifyingly another simple level. The 4 fuel pickups which we need are all pretty close by. As we touch down on the green rocky surface, or beneath the green rocky surface right there. You see our little pod blasting out. I guess prematurely, as we haven't jumped in yet, but from the start, I like to grab the only fuel cell which is on the left side. It's halfway down the map, just filtering through the columns, getting over to the far left chamber. We can take out these turrets, which will launch out little ships if you let them. Another ship, which if we put enough bullets into it, it will go down. We just keep descending, and finally, all the way down here at the bottom of this chamber at least, we have our fuel cell. That was satisfying right there, just coming close without having to correct your course at all there. So there is a wormhole if you go to the left there, but probably just easier and or safer to take it straight back up to our ship. For what it's worth, there was a radioactive, if you kind of hugged right and down of where we picked up this fuel cell, there's a radioactive in a chamber beneath it. There's also a radioactive and a gem to the left of our ship, pretty close to the wall, and then we'll get refueled here. And then there's one more gem and an extra ship, which is in a chamber to the right of the fuel cell, but you have to go through one of those very narrow little cut-throughs, and there's no wormholes to deposit the gem into. You have to take it through that little narrow area, so we don't need it though, so we're just going to focus on the fuel cells. There's one immediately to the right of our mothership. Just kind of hug that wall as you go down and pick it up and take it back up to the ship. Most efficient way to do that. You'll note there is a top speed which you hit whether you're using your extra boost or not, so don't waste your boost needlessly, or extra boost. My way of saying that. You can feel once you've hit maximum velocity, essentially. For the most part, it's just for maintaining your trajectory, making sure you're not dipping too far down. Certainly not about to hit a wall or something like that, but in this chest we got ourselves just south, once again, of 2500 in the space credits department. Very valuable. There is a fuel tank immediately beneath that, where we picked up that chest for what it's worth. But we want to grab one more fuel cell, which is all the way to the right. Just wait until you dead end against the wall, and then drop down. And then fish it out. There's another chest in a chamber which is pretty much directly beneath the fuel cell which we just picked up. You just have to basically hug the land left and down and then into that chamber to the right. And that chest is worth a little under 500, so not necessarily worth the time. What is worth our time is there's another bonus area which is akin to the one which we found, and there's that fuel tank I mentioned earlier. There's a bonus level akin to the one which we found in the first stage of this game, actually, where you have to guide the ship back and forth, left and right, to grab the gems which appear. In this case, I believe there's only 9 of them in this one. I've tried to find the 10th. If someone knows of a 10th, let me know, but I've only ever found 9, unless there's an invisible one which I've just never been able to grab. But the final fuel cell before we do that is in this little chamber here. And rather than having to tow this back to the ship, there's a much more convenient wormhole just southeast of that fuel cell. And we're good to go. So before we do that, let's make sure we hit that hidden area which I mentioned. Grab ourselves $900 at least. And at most, should get quite a bit less than that at least, but we're going to aim for 900. And this is a different layout than the first bonus area which we came to. You might not even remember that one at this point, so it doesn't matter, but this is the layout here. For what it's worth, if you do happen to hit one of the rocks, it just kind of knocks you out of the way. If you hit one of the bombs, which are those blue spherical bomb-looking things, that will end your bonus round prematurely. Although, in somewhat of a questionable design decision, yeah, the most of the bombs don't appear until after all the gems have appeared, so doesn't matter. You still get the gems even if you hit one of those bombs, for what it's worth. But the little under $500 chest is just down here, and considering it's not really out of our way, might as well grab it. That wormhole which we deposited that final fuel cell is on the way to the Golden Warpship piece for this 5th planet, so might as well. And again, along the way, if you haven't already redeemed the fuel tank like we did, it's just south of where our ship is right now. But more importantly for our purposes, certainly, there is a bonus ship en route to the Golden Warpship area, and we'll probably need it at this rate with how much we're getting smacked around. It's just through a very narrow, crystal-lined corridor, actually a couple en route to getting there, but some grass. I could see how that would be less valuable than some robot parts or Easter Island heads. Alright, so now just thankfully this isn't too damaging, and yes, you can touch down on your feet on surfaces for what it's worth. It's not especially useful in this game, but Snell will definitely be needing that extra ship, which is if you just hug the ceiling here, right here. And then ultimately this area connects, if you just keep going left, it just makes a loop where you can get to, I guess, the radioactive and yeah, some of that stuff I talked about very early on this planet, but we don't need them. So we're going to go up here at the junction, which on the left side will lead us to the Golden Warpship piece area for this 5th planet. As we get sucked in, and this is just a bit of a backwards L on its side shape here. And the only security they have in place for defending this Golden Warpship piece is this single ship, so definitely take it out with the rate of bullets it's sending out there, just to make this a bit less complicated. And I forget if I mentioned this, we're now 5 planets in, so I apologize, but they turn off the gravity when you're in the Golden Warpship area of every stage. So, the only thing which is controlling your movement at this point are your thrusters themselves, and I guess the weight of whatever you're towing, which would only ever be the Golden Warpship piece / circus tent chest? I don't know. What do you see, class? Leave a comment, but our delicious piece of fish is coming along nicely. Let's wreck this thing and head on to the 5th cyber zone. We'll see what kind of crazy color scheme we're working with this time to try to trick out our eyes. But our eyes are on the prize, right, class? We want... this isn't too bad. We want all 10 of these as always. And assuming we sweep this once again, we will come out of this with our count being at 15,500. So if you consider that you only spent 10,000 on the other... That was a little close there, actually. Yeah, if you only spent 10,000 on the lesser of the 2 jet pod upgrades, then at this point, you should have yourself probably 30 grand if things are going pretty well. So more than enough money to afford the IRJ, and we're still a couple planets away from being at the shop which actually stocks it next. But we do have a new shop here with a new item, so Blaze?
Alright, the 3rd shop has only one new item for us. At $5,000, the Super Mapping Device is a useful item in revealing the locations of all items and wormholes. The 2 drawbacks are that you can only see within a certain radius around you, and it doesn't distinguish between types of items or even items and wormholes, but still, it can be helpful to pull up from time to time to locate nearby points of interest, or you can just listen to the professor to learn where you should go and what you should prioritize.
I certainly will. Thank you very much, Blaze. Just grabbing a few things here and there, certainly grabbing the Super Mapping Device. Probably not going to be redeeming any of these temporary one-off items here. But still, good to have a bank of a few of these for subsequent more challenging stages. Don't need the money for any big purchases moving forward now that we've got the super mapping device, so just kind of spreading it around, just can't take it with us basically. Buying one of everything for the most part, but Lamonte, you can see the gravity is unlike any we've experienced to date at this point. It's a big one too. But now that we've got the super mapping device, you can pull it up on demand by pressing the pause button and start, and then pressing select, as you do in the past to check the map. But yeah, if you do, it'll show that we've got something just up and to the left of our starting position. This is a chest worth a little under 5k, though it's guarded by a pair of powerful lasers, so yeah, you gotta thread that needle right there, and that will definitely destroy your ship in a single shot without the shield. While you're towing, you can use that just to make sure you know where your ship is relative to where you are right then. But high risk, high reward with that pile of gems. 4872 once again. And let's top off our shield once again. But with that sorted, follow along, and there's another warp on this level, right, Fluff?
The warp area here on level 6 is in the southwest quadrant of the map. From your ship, go down the long corridor, then hook left and up through another one, and follow the path left and down until you get to the bottom. At this point, just follow the path to the right, minding the laser turrets. There's a gem down here for the completionists and or sadists out there, along with a couple bonus pods along the way, should, or better said, when you'll need one. Finally, at the end of this route, you'll find a wormhole which takes you to an area with a single ship and 2 warp wormholes. The top leads to level 9, whereas the bottom leads to level 10. Given the loot you probably have at this point, assuming you've gotten the best ship, you can make this jump without worrying about missing anything too important. But if you've come this far, you might just want to stick it out and hit every level just like we are.
Good call, Fluff. Yeah, note that that warp is hidden. It's kind of on a little platform, so it's obvious that there's something there. But yeah, just mine those turrets just like we did right there. Once again, there's just the one fuel cell on the left half of the map, in this case conveniently located right next to a wormhole. To drop it in and then take that wormhole to any of the 3 others, as they're all located relatively close to another one of the 3 remaining fuel cells which we'll need. You can see we're at the top of this area here, and down inside the chamber is where we'll find ourselves another fuel cell. In this big open chamber, there's a fuel cell up and to the left, and then we've got 3 radioactives represented by those 3 flashing dots in that giant chamber in there. But yeah, there's just a bunch of laser firing robots, very annoying laser firing robots, to give them their full title. There's one right there. Yeah, which just makes maintaining height and distance as you're trying to attack one of them with the gravity on this stage makes it difficult, so just want to point out you can go get those. We're just going to focus on the fuel right here. Didn't mean to turn it off that time, actually. You'll find there's a lot of mental gymnastics which you need to perform as you're playing Solar Jetman. Depending on your current situation, enemies around you, the gravity, what you're towing, all that good stuff, your current fuel level. Be nice if the IRJ had an extra turret on the bottom, but yeah, that would probably ruin the aesthetic of the pod. To its presumably Italian designers, yeah, this is too dangerous. Let's get out of here. The remaining 2 fuel cells are closer to the center of the map. So we're just going to hit that nearest wormhole, which we just deposited that fuel cell in to get transported back to the mothership. Get ourselves a fresh pod. And then dive back down into it once again. And then if you like, at the junction you can head right, or up and to the right, where you can grab yourself another treasure chest, which is worth 423. There's a gem to the far right as well, should you want it, but yeah, we're not going to mess with that. Alternatively, you can go back to the left and go through that wormhole again, but let's just follow this path along. Just in the interest of mixing it up. Also in the interest of mixing it up, let's bring in Fluff for a non-warp related fact finally, and have him tell us something about Solar Jetman. Fluff?
Solar Jetman is a 1990 NES title developed by both Zippo Games and Rare and published by TradeWest, and is actually the third title overall in the Jetman series. Going back a couple years, Rare's founding brothers and Chris and Tim Stamper commissioned the Manchester, England-based Zippo Games founding brothers and Steve and John Pickford to develop a sequel to Rare's original Wizards and Warriors, another game which we did a recent class on. This became 1989's Iron Sword, Wizards and Warriors 2. Being impressed at the results, Rare purchased Zippo Games and tasked them with making subsequent titles for them. While Steve Pickford was purportedly displeased with the takeover and wanting to develop games on their own, Rare allowed them creative control over their projects as Zippo Games got to work on their next title named Iota, which was meant to be an arcade shooter in line with the Atari ST's 1987 title, Oids. Things soured further midway through the development on Iota when Rare ordered Zippo Games to turn the game instead into a Jetman title. Zippo Games continued on just the same with little input from Rare, which Steve later attributed to Rare's confidence in them, as Steve Pickford explained that he took a major inspiration for the gameplay from the ZX Spectrum title Scuba Diving. While the game was well received from critics and especially praised for its unique gameplay, its sales didn't reflect this, and as such, ongoing work to port the game to the ZX Spectrum, Atari ST, Amiga, and Commodore 64 were scrapped, and Zippo Games was repurposed to begin work on the third title in the Wizards and Warriors series. Despite this, it was clear that Nintendo themselves appreciated this novel title in Solar Jetman, as they re-released the game as an inclusion for their PlayChoice 10 arcade system, not to mention acted as the publishers for the European release on Solar Jetman in 1991. For what it's worth, shortly after Rare acquired Zippo Games, they renamed them Rare Manchester, before ultimately closing that office and absorbing some of their employees in 1992 ahead of the release of Rare Manchester's developed Wizards and Warriors 3.
Good call, Fluff. Very interesting. Yeah, I didn't realize that Rare was outsourcing work. But, yeah, ultimately they became part of Rare, but now you understand why I kept putting an asterisk next to saying Rare are the developers. It was mostly Zippo Games there, but still, very solid title. Just the one last fuel cell to collect, though. And we'll use the warp, actually, to pop out back in the topmost warp, around the green area, whatever that's meant to be. More of the surface. And just kind of hug this wall to the left. And grab yourself the final fuel tank, or cell, excuse me. The instruction manual is very scant when it comes to the names of these actual items, so, and really details in general, so you're gonna have to come up with your own terms. Go by what the game says in some cases, but clearing out all these turrets to drop this back up into that wormhole which we just came out of. And then at that point we could just basically hug the top of the screen of the planet and go all the way to the right until we dead end against the wall and then drop down, and that's where we'll find the warp area for the Golden Warpship piece for here on the 6th planet of Lamonte, or Lemon Tea, if you will. And there is, for what it's worth, a spare ship. We just hug the surface right here. That's why we just crashed our ship. There you are. Just go over this. This goes all the way up to the top of the screen, but And then there's an opening to the left here, but that leads back to that giant chamber with the 3 radioactives I referenced earlier, which we want no part of because of all the traffic and lasers and all that bad stuff. So instead we're gonna go to the right where this chamber dead ends into that warp I mentioned. But yeah, this is just a nasty combination right here. I don't like this cocktail at all. We got anti-gravity, we got super gravity, we got lasers just pounding into our shields. It doesn't matter. Thankfully, the top left of the area where we actually want to get is relatively unguarded. And then a relatively small area here in the Golden Warpship piece room. Just a bunch of gravity sucking spheres, which you'll want to clear out if you have any chance of towing this thing up to that little area. I think that'll do it. It's a very strange feeling after dealing with the gravity of the strongest gravity planet we've encountered to this point, being in this room where there's 0 gravity whatsoever. It's just about where you boost yourself. But looking tasty, halfway home, class. Let's wreck her and get on with the cyber zone. Moving on to the 7th planet now overall after this. Let's see what we got this time. Ooh, pink. Different kind of pink than what we had earlier. This is like, I don't know, like a tortoiseshell pattern pink. I don't know. It's weird. It's a choice. I think I have a side goal now of being able to touch down on that center surface. Just never get down there in time. We'll get there. We'll get there by the end. Alright, 72.98, plenty of space credits to spend, and as always, do you want to continue exploring to get those radioactives or any of the other relatively small value treasures which we left behind or re-equip, or in our case, just blasting off? I can click through these for what it's worth, but it's part of the experience, right? Seeing the exact same animation every time. Alright, Chorlton. Looks the most like Earth, I think, of any planet we've come across. The gravity's a bit lower than we've encountered, at least in that last planet. Again, looks like something out of Toe Jam and Earl. Like a planet they would touch down on, be walking around on. But let's explore. There's about a half a dozen gems to be grabbed, as well as a couple radioactives, plus 2 chests, one of which only has a single buck in it. I think Blaze mentioned that earlier. There are chests in this game which have $1 in it. Just because this game isn't as hard as Battletoads doesn't mean that Rare Stamper Brothers can't be cruel. I'm sure that was their suggestion. It's not hard enough. Put in $1 chests. So yeah, we're going to skip that one. But at the start, head right to a plateau, which is basically parallel in terms of height with our mothership, where we'll find our first fuel cell, which we'll just bring back to the ship, not even stopping off to make sure it got deposited successfully. We're cool like that. We don't care. We act like we don't care. Next, we're going to go left and down, hugging the wall to grab a chest, which has a little under 1,000 in it. Destroying that enemy producer before we do it, obviously. And there's the mini chest for 25. Let's see what we got. Empty containers. Somehow that's worth more than, well, some of the things we picked up. I don't know. Not that much, but... Alright, so now we're going to head left again. Staying a bit higher until we find an opening between two plateaus, following the path around until it dead ends into a fuel cell and a crystal. And you can grab the crystal if you like, and then this enemy has its little kind of force field barrier if you try going too close around the side of it. We just load up with shots in its face, that'll destroy it as well. We can line these up sometimes. There you go. I appreciate the animation on some of these ships as you chip away at them as they lose part of their structure. There's the wormhole we'll be towing it back to. We just want the fuel cell. It's actually about 3 gems, I would say, in this area. If you bring up your map, you can see them in the area, but yeah, by the time we're on Planet 7, as is the case right now, just, yeah, we can't be bothered to stop off for $500 items. We got priorities. Trying to put together the Golden Warpship, which, spoiler alert, will not be worth it in the end, but still. We're gonna do it. That is our promise. Sometimes I don't mean to turn off the shield, but just in the madness of playing this game, trying to control your pod, you find yourself accidentally tapping on that up arrow on the D-pad when you don't mean to, or sometimes engaging the shields when you're towing something when you don't mean to, so. That was close. Always be ready with that A button. It's nice that when you just need to go left to right or vice versa and can let the weight of whatever you're towing do most of the heavy lifting for you. No pun intended. But pop up there and grab that fuel tank if you need it like we did quite sorely in this situation. This is another planet with an underwater area, actually. And we're not there yet. You can see the cutoff right there as I pull up the map just to get my bearings. There's a fuel immediately to the left of us right here. The gem immediately above us and a radioactive to the right of that wormhole. And then if you keep going hard left from our position right here, there is a gem which is at the end of a very narrow little area, which I don't recommend in case you couldn't tell. Not sure we're going to hit that 10 gem quota to earn ourselves an extra life, but I'm comfortable with that. We have enough fuel. Only need the 3 on this one, so there is a bonus beneath the waves. Before we pop in and hit the wormhole to send us underwater, let's just grab it because it's so close by and easy to grab. That radioactive I mentioned, just to the right of the wormhole. Yeah, this planet is not too bad. I don't mind the underwater sections. There is kind of a nasty, tight area in terms of underwater caverns upcoming here, which is going to be annoying. There's a very strategically placed, frustrating enemy, or a gravity-based enemy, which we need to deal with. So while we could use the wormhole to give ourselves a shortcut, we're a little low on fuel, obviously, so let's go the longer way, where there's a fuel tank which we can grab en route. There's also a spare ship, actually, for what it's worth, but which we might need at this rate. All right, then. I think we just slipped through there. Still kind of using while our bar was going up, but that's not a sure thing. But there is the tank for what it's worth. And then the extra pod is just at the bottom of this area right there. It's not too bad. Not too much risk involved, but we're going to follow the bottom path here. You can go up to find yourself kind of in the middle path. If you go to the top path, that's where the wormhole would spit you out, but on the middle path, there's a radioactive and a gem moving right to left, but we don't care about those, so we're just going to hang more at the bottom and then follow this wall up and to the left until you reach the junction, in which case you want to go left. And then that annoying, very tight area which I referenced a moment ago is upcoming here. Thankfully there will be a fuel tank which we can grab, and count them, two extra ships which we can grab along the way. You'll probably need one at some point, but let me show you what I'm talking about here. Things get very tight around this area, and there is I guess it's an anti-gravity, one of those orange things, which can make navigating this area very frustrating, especially when you got projectiles flying at you, you've got enemies flying in some cases, so sooner you can take that out the better. And the fuel tank is just up and to the left in this little opening right there. Can I get it before we run out of... Oh, that was close. Again, we got 2 spare ships if you just keep pressing on, but it's a bit of a gunner's alley here with all the different projectiles, turrets, enemies flying in at random times, so it's like a super soaker when that one enemy is in its 90-degree position right there. Here's the first of the 2 extra pods. Said you might need one, you might need both by the time you get down there, or I might need both, better said. Maybe you're playing better than I am, class, but admittedly playing a little bit loose, knowing that we do have these restorative items and ships and all this good stuff all kind of chocked down in one area down here. And there it is. Keep pressing on, and it's the water physics, it's just kind of throwing me for a loop here. But head into the Golden Warpship area. This area is linear, just left to right, but slowly take out the 4 turret banks before trying to grab the Warpship piece, obviously. I find if I come in with just the right amount of thrust, just the right touch on the ship, the pod, at just the right angle, then we can avoid their shots from these turrets, these little pods that they've got going here, while we get our shots in. I like to think that it's as frustrating for them as this game is to me on occasion, but but it works pretty well. Sometimes not so much. A lot of this game sometimes comes down to luck when it comes to threading the needle, certainly when gravity is not involved like it is not here, as you'll see a little bit later. This should be the last one. And again, getting some of those shots off screen can be useful. There we go. Taking quite a few shots there and waiting to pick this up, disengage our shield before that final missile gets out of the way. Just a straight shot here now, looking good. And after this, we'll hopefully ace our next cyber zone to come out with a little over 11 grand to spend. And we have another shop to spend that money in with some new items this time. So Blaze, what do we got to look forward to and spend our money on this time?
Alright, the 4th shop has a few new offerings. First, the Star Bullets, which fires little star turrets, which can fire additional shots, which seek targets on the screen much faster and effectively than either the homing missiles or the multi-warhead missiles. If you're gonna take the secondary weapon or any secondary weapon to this point, this is definitely the one you should take, with 7 uses with full ammo. Next, the Momentum Killer. This is an interesting item which quickly slows your momentum after you take your finger off the thrusters. It basically rewrites the entire gameplay of the game, which admittedly some of the class might enjoy. it can make making shots a bit easier, as you can see. Lastly, the double strength thrusters are very useful on heavy gravity planets, not so much on the weaker gravity planets, but yes, this can help to level out the difficulty for those heavier gravity planets.
Thank you very much, Blaze. Good call. Yeah, we're going to be spending some money here on this shop. Just basically making sure that we have a few of everything, since money is not too important to us at this stage in the game, since we've already got the IRJ. Like to point out a piece of music from Mr. David Wise here upcoming. Let me know if it sounds familiar to you after we finish with the shop here, but let's see what we got. We already got 3 of a lot of these right now, so the star bullets, add some of those. A few momentum killers. We're going to keep playing the game vanilla for now. Don't really recommend anything necessarily until some of the later planets, which we'll talk about, but alright, listen in right here. Does this sound familiar? Superman, anyone? Can't not hear that. That's the first few notes for that here on Shish Kebab. And also, when we touch down, you'll see it kind of looks like the ice planet Krypton that Superman was born on, but as you'll see here, doesn't it kind of? But I digress. We've got reversed gravity here on Shish Kebab, as you could see from the stats. It was a -24 on the gravity, so it's kind of like being underwater, but for the entire stage, we're being pushed up. There's precious little treasure to be grabbed here on the 8th planet as well, just a few gems and radioactives, and a chest for under 200 bucks, none of which is worth our time. There is a warp right at the top, literally. Fluff?
The final warp in the game is found in the top right corner here on level 8. It's not too difficult to hit if you come in with a full head of steam. Just stay at the top of the screen, and you'll hit the warp in time to take you to the otherwise inaccessible bonus level that is 13.
Thank you, Fluff. So we need all 4 fuel cells on this map. So at the start, go left, following the ground into a tunnel. Just keep going down and sticking to the left-hand side until you reach a fuel cell. There's a couple ships here you'll want to take out to make this area a bit safer. In addition to the fuel cell and wormhole, there's also a spare ship, and just below it a fuel tank to grab before jumping into the wormhole yourself. And there's the extra ship, and just clearing out, making this area a little bit safer for our purposes before we drop our shield and start towing anything. Yeah, after all of the planets with normal gravity, it kind of does your head in a little bit. Very different, the reversed gravity, pulling you to the top of the screen. Makes for a fun little curveball. After everything else, need a lot more fuel to leave this planet. Always important as you're coming out of one of those messages when you're depositing anything, and there's the fuel tank at the bottom. Whenever you deposit anything into a wormhole, is be ready to immediately put your shields back up when you come out of it. And yeah, these little ones, obviously, by the way, don't need to put your shield down for. I forget if I mentioned that or not. It's not like the more conventional wormholes, whatever the proper language is for them, but this wormhole spits us out immediately below the aforementioned sub-$200 chest, and just above a radioactive, so if you want to grab those, go for it. But once you've done that, hop back in the wormhole, as this allows us to skip a couple very tight, spiky tunnels. Treating the spiky tunnel like an access point, this wormhole puts us in a little area where all 3 remaining fuel cells are somewhat close by. This entire planet is actually, thankfully, smaller relative to some of the recent ones we've hit. But head right and clear out that circle of ships guarding the fuel tank. Might want to hold off on grabbing it if you don't need it right away, if you can avoid shooting that along with all those ships right there, but yeah, might need that as we'll be going through this little junction area time and time again. There's another directly to the right as well, and another is right and down, and there's actually a spare ship down that way too. So there should be enough restorative items here to keep you alive to grab all 3 of the fuel cells, bringing them back to that same wormhole. And then once you've done that, you can head southwest of it to the Golden Warpship piece wormhole. Yeah, I love the more straightforward, more linear, smaller planets. Throw whatever kind of weird gravity combinations you want at me, that's fine. Just keep it simple. Don't have us jumping all over the place. I like it when the fuel cells are all nice and close to one another. These don't necessarily have a weaker spot. Just getting those shots in, and again, I like that design of taking out half of that little ship right there at a time. Taking out the threats from one side, and as always, just make sure those homing missiles are dealt with your shield up before you try dropping the shield and towing anything. Thankfully, they're about, as we redeem that fuel tank right there, they're about as ineffective as the homing missiles, which we can use as well, so. Very satisfying. I've mentioned it before, but just coming in on that, just kind of a rope, and just, you have that, whatever you're towing, perfectly, as is this right here. This is pretty satisfying. Fighting the gravity just so that we are able to make a straight line left to right. That is rare in this game, where gravity is, well, a game that's all about gravity. Let's drop down here and grab ourselves what should be the final fuel cell to take back. And thankfully very quiet. Kind of on this planet in general, honestly, and yeah, just starting to get away from us there, so engaging the shield, dropping the cargo. Kind of like the fuel cells acting as a balloon right now, lifting us up. They could have gotten away, for my money, just making a spin-off game of this where the gravity is reversed for the entire game. You're always fighting the top of the screen pulling you down. I would have played that. I would have happily played that. Just make it a bit shorter. I don't think this game needs to be 13, 14 levels long. I guess 13 levels long. By the way, Fluff mentioned the hidden as we go into this area. This area is housed in a giant C-shaped chamber. It's lined with regular turrets, so just take out a handful of them to make things easier. By this point in the game, you probably have a much better grasp on the handling of your ship, especially in these zero gravity areas. So just to point that out, but yeah, Fluff mentioned the warp here on the 8th planet overall takes us, it's the sole one which takes us to an otherwise inaccessible planet. We will be showing you how to navigate that planet, get through it in full, right before we take on the final area of this game, just for what it's worth, giving you the full experience, but just wanted to make that clear. And again, if you choose to warp from this stage to the 13th planet, once you beat the 13th planet, even though you skipped some of the Golden Warpship pieces, they just kind of spot them to you, I guess, and then after you beat 13, they take you back to 12, so just to point that out for what it's worth, and just a little lazy and not wanting to take out all the turrets, trying to be a little mindful of our fuel, but yeah, just didn't feel like taking out every single one. But the main thing is putting up those shields once the weight becomes a bit too much to maintain control of the jet pod. And then get this in position, and we'll just kind of spear this one from the 8 o'clock position. Just slow it in. Is that an expression? Slow it in? We'll make it an expression, but there we are. The 8th overall piece of the Golden Warpship, and same rules apply. Just smashing the ship up. Bullets are more efficient. I'm always looking for a bullet in this situation. There we go. Alright. We're 7 for 7 on these cyber zones. Let's see if we can go 8 for 8 here. Even though money is kind of meaningless to us at this point in the game. Nasty color. Kind of an off yellow. Something different though. I appreciate it from that perspective. Let's get in a nice figure 8 here. Let's see if we can get boots on the ground by the end of this one. Probably our cleanest run so far. Oh, it's gonna be close. Oh, we always just bounce off. I might just settle for trying to go for the touching down on that top left little landmass in there moving forward, but yeah, again, just radioactives and other low value treasures to be found. But we're moving on to the final stretch here in Solar Jetman. Just a handful of planets left. Still a ways to go. Maybe get another fluff fact on this next one. Planet number 9 as we leave Krypton / shish kebab. Laz Tortoise, and it's the same gravity but in reverse this time, some more of the conventional gravity, pulling us instead of pushing us, I suppose, relative to the ground, but we've got a bonus area if we're quick enough at the start of this one. Just head straight up and to the right and you'll hit it for a chance to earn 2,000 space credits once again if you sweep it. Right there, just perfect timing. And again, layout is always the same once you get to this one, so... And there are 10 obvious gems available for pickup. And this one might be easier than the first one, honestly. The first one had us swinging back between two extremes. Again, there were no bombs, I don't think, in that one. It was just rocks, but those can end your day early, but... I think that was 10. Let's count them up. There we go. Extra 1,000. But after you hit that, go a bit to the right as you drop down to the ground to get a chest with a little under $1,000 in it. Right here. And we're going to return to our ship, and there's also a safe and easy fuel cell to get all the way to the right on the surface. So after you grab that, I'm going to front load the info on this one since we'll bring in Fluff, but drop into the opening just to the right of your mothership after that, making sure that you top off your fuel, obviously, if necessary. Pineapple. Mouse. Sure, however you want to count that up. But after you drop into that opening next to the mothership, take out the turrets along the corridor until you reach a chamber with a large rock in the center and 2 fuel cells on the ground of either side of it. You can take these to the wormhole, which is at the 9 o'clock position of the rock, but there is a laser turret sitting just below it, so as such, I prefer to play it safe, especially since we haven't died yet. And yeah, take these back to the mothership as it's not too far. That's why I recommend taking out the turrets in the tunnel, so makes for an easier return trip. With the fuel, there's also a chest which is worth a whole $1, $1 whole, in the top left of that chamber. So Rare still isn't done messing with us. There's actually one more of those ahead, but I won't dignify those with a mention moving forward. You can't tell me the chest itself isn't at least worth a few bucks. Come on now. For what it's worth, following the narrow tunnel below the wormhole, you'll find a gem at the first junction, as well as a radioactive and fuel tank at the bottom of that. Kind of a dead end. It's of no use to us though, so after depositing a second fuel cell from that chamber, 3rd overall, refuel your ship at the mothership and head right, entering the rightmost and final of 3 tunnels from the surface down below. Follow the path to the right at the junction, then hug the left wall to grab the final fuel cell which we need. There's some annoying timed laser barriers if you approach from the left, hence my preference for coming that way, but yeah, take that final fuel cell right until the floor disappears, then drop down to drop it in the wormhole, and then from there there's a fuel tank for your health just to the right below that wormhole. You can grab that and follow the ground to the right until it becomes a wall, and then following it up to the Golden Warpship piece. But with that in mind, just follow along as we bring in Fluff now for another Fluff fact about Solar Jetman.
I've talked before about brothers Chris and Tim Stamper, who co-founded the British-based video game developer Ultimate Play the Game in 1982. The brothers created titles for a number of home computer systems in the early 80s, including the very successful ZX Spectrum and VIC-20 1983 title Jetpack. Jetpack won Game of the Year at the Golden Joystick Awards that same year, and sold over 300,000 copies, which was very good for such a small studio. It was so successful, in fact, that it kept the company afloat during a lean time for them in those early 80s, courtesy of the roughly £1 million in revenue that it brought in. The company quickly got to work on its successor to capitalize off of that success, releasing Lunar Jetman for the ZX Spectrum in that same calendar year of 1983. In both titles, players controlled the titular Jetman character from Solar Jetman as he flies around in his jetpack, similar to the jetpack the player is left with should their pod be destroyed in Solar Jetman. But in Lunar Jetman's case, the objective was to collect bombs and locate and destroy enemy bases. Ultimate Play the Game continued to develop titles into the mid-80s, winning the Golden Joystick Award for essentially what was the best developer for both 83 and 84. The Stamper brothers sold part of the company to a British video game publisher named US Gold, who began selling lower quality titles through the Ultimate label, while Tim and Chris began releasing games under the moniker Rare Limited as an unaffiliated label to US Gold, which they could develop for. It didn't take long before their titles, which they developed under the Rare brand, had them eclipsing the Ultimate Play the Game name, and they bought back the US Gold sold rights in 1988, just as they were getting into their early days of their successful chapter in developing for the NES. As I covered in previous classes on Rare developed games, Nintendo went on to purchase a stake in Rare, and the two companies became closely tied, with Rare eventually becoming a second-party developer for Nintendo in the 90s. A fruitful partnership, which especially blossomed in the mid-90s, with massive Rare-developed hits like Donkey Kong Country series for the Super Nintendo and GoldenEye 007 for the N64. And oh, just because we can't devote a dedicated fact to the man every time we cover a Rare-developed game, Solar Jetman's soundtrack was composed by Rare's longtime composer David Wise, who, as I recently mentioned in our class on Wizards and Warriors, was their sole composer on roughly 50 games before they even brought in a second person in that role in the early to mid-90s.
Thank you, Fluff. Yeah, talk about a workhorse in David Wise for Rare in those late 80s and early 90s years. My goodness. Averaging like 6 titles a year, if not more. It's a little ridiculous, and lots of quality, too. I have to say. I mean, it wouldn't reach the heights, I think most would agree, that he would achieve when he reached the next generation of consoles in the Donkey Kong Country series. Just some of the greatest soundtracks and individual pieces in video game music history. I think most would be in agreement right there, for those who have heard it. Yeah, I think I mentioned this before, but one of the first CDs I ever owned was, and I think I got it through Nintendo Power, but the triple CD for the Donkey Kong Country entire collection when it came to the soundtrack for those games. When I first started to get into music, I guess the first kind of music I ever listened to was mostly video game music before I listened to the radio or anything like that, so yeah, David Wise's compositions, especially in that trilogy, meant a lot to me as a kid. Just, yeah, I would put that on again and again and again. Just another reminder that we need to eventually tackle the Donkey Kong Country series here on Video Games 101. But this chamber just has a few ships, but with the benefit of no gravity, as normal, you can line up your shots without too much hassle, and with the fuel tank we just got, you should have enough juice in the tank to get it back to the wormhole, the Golden Warpship piece here. Just down at the end here. Now we have a nice clear path to deposit this. crash our ship and get ready to knock out another cyber zone. There we go. Starting to look a bit more like a Golden Warpship and less like a entree you'd get at your seafood restaurant of choice. Let's see what color scheme we have to work with this time. That is green. And that movement in the background, or the perceived movement in the background, I suppose by design makes it a bit more difficult to... That's going to cost us. Let's just try touching down here. There we go. All right. Side challenge fulfilled. Back up to 10,000. And we're coming up on the 5th shop here in Solar Jetman, and I think we have some new items in stock. Blaze?
Alright, just a couple final options here in this store. The final 2 stores, we have Smart Bombs. We've finally gotten to my weapon of the game here in Solar Jetman in the Smart Bombs. Only 2 uses per full bar, but it destroys everything on the screen. Most notably, very difficult to navigate and tow over laser cannons. You don't need to be accurate either, just make sure it's on the screen and it's gone. Lastly, the military bullet system, which is just a more powerful version of the titanium bullet pack with the strongest bullets you can fire, and once again, will grow and spread out the farther away they get from your ship.
Thank you, Blaze, and we can go ahead and stock up on a few of each of those. And actually, I recommend that you buy the Smart Bombs right here ahead of the 10th planet, because, I recommend taking one along with you for the trip here. You're on Chamois Gen. 24 gravity once again. Seems wasteful almost to just use this music on the little title screen for each planet. I think they should extend that onto the planets themselves, but just for a little variety, and also some of those pieces are amongst the best in the game. So yeah, equip those Smart Bombs, as well, you'll see why once we get there. This one is very simple by virtue of how it's laid out with another linear path. There are 5 fuel cells, but thankfully we only need 4 because the one to the right of the ship is in a very narrow and winding spike-line corridor, which, with no wormholes around there, you would need to tow the fuel cell through. You think they'd make it easier once you get to the open chamber where the fuel cell is located, but it's full of those annoying snake enemies, so yeah, unless you're going for some completionist, and as I think Fluff described it, sadist's run, just skip that. So as you can see, next to this wormhole we have 2 of those nasty laser turrets guarding it, so once you've got both of them on the screen, hold select and tap A if you brought those Smart Bombs to clear that out and make this whole area much safer and easier. That's the way to do it as far as I'm concerned. We have a fuel tank, which is up and to the right as well for what it's worth. We're going to need that sooner than later. I kind of panicked with my first use of the Smart Bomb, but yeah, after you clear out the laser turrets guarding that wormhole, then you're in much better shape. But yeah, we're going to skip that entire right side of our mothership, as it's just a couple gems and a couple sub $1,000 chests. One of which is, you guessed it, $1. And I swore I wouldn't mention those again, but yeah, we're going to need that fuel tank before we try depositing this cell here. Yeah, even going on the left side, which, I mean, you would have to do regardless because that's where most of the fuel cells are, but there's a lot of the stupid worms this way, so always be ready with those shields. But I find that if you're quick from the start, you have a much better chance of getting through this area before you see at least as many of them. Sometimes if you're lucky without seeing any of them, but yeah. Let's just deposit this fuel cell here, and yeah, just always got to be ready to engage those shields with that down button in this area, especially. There we are. Still need some more fuel, but with all those deposited, unless you want the radioactive and or gem to the left and right of the initial fuel cell in this area, And you can head through the tight little corridor right here. And then got 3 of the super gravity spheres as soon as you come out ready to greet you. There's a gem down there, obviously. And then lots of the laser turrets, but thankfully we don't need to go back that way to deposit this one. But this is the final fuel cell we'll need. We're just gonna take it right down here, and don't worry if you lose your ship because we got a spare right here. Very handy. And the wormhole is just down and to the left. We got another anti-gravity sphere waiting for us. See, when you shoot those spheres, they turn into kind of the little aliens that you need to shoot to access some of the warp areas, actually. Albeit in a, I think, slightly different color, but this is where we that didn't work out so hot. The worst is when you accidentally, you come in so fast that you smack the wall, and if you have whatever you're towing at the exact lowest point on your ship, it makes it difficult to retrieve it actually from inside the wall, essentially. And now the Golden Warpship piece is through this corridor of some laser turrets, so we're a little worse for wear on our fuel, so let's try to be careful as we come through here. And then the Golden Warpship area is a large chamber which has a huge rock jutting up into it, which you need to fly around, going left to right here, clockwise. The left side is lined with basic turrets, which I find aren't too annoying. I mean, the right side of the wall, but the left side of this chamber overall. Yeah, they're not too bad, but the right side has the gravity-sucking spheres, so you'll definitely want to go ahead and clear these out before grabbing the warp ship piece. Don't even want to think about attempting this, carrying that heavy warp ship piece in tow. Wow, that thing's sucking us in, just the amount of physics, mind-bending physics involved in that situation. Alright, coming out a little hot here. This is a little tighter than I normally like to end these. With the circus tent. Alright, well this is gonna be interesting. This is gonna be very frustrating. Should we need to go all the way back? Can we just about... There we go. That is drama here on Video Games 101, thank goodness. And then instantly destroyed our ship. Don't have to go out of our way to wreck it that time. We did most of the work just getting there, but there we go. Looking good. There's Cyber Zone here. That is disgusting. Let's see if we can clear this in time to touchdown once again. I think I've given up on dropping down on the center crag, but certainly the top bit. Oh yeah. Very satisfying there in the end of Chamois Jam or whatever that was called. Let's blast off. I know we do have a couple gems or radioactives that we left on the surface. I don't care. We got more Golden Warpship pieces to collect. A couple more. At least in this run. I will obviously show you the alternate dimension version of alternate universe version where we show you the 13th planet. But moving on to essentially the penultimate planet if you're playing this game through linearly, as we are. This is Shangku with 56 gravity. Ridiculous. Decent size too. It's time to really start thinking about our loadout here on Shangku. The gravity is just obnoxious on this planet, so the double strength thrusters are a must. They're best used on a planet like this, as they make this feel more like an average planet in terms of gravity. Not to mention that it'll make carrying fuel cells much easier. Might as well take a military bullet system if you've got one, and I recommend a smart bomb as probably the best option for that secondary weapon if you've got any left, for any break glass moments you might encounter. Not to mention it just makes a couple stretches a bit easier if you've got them on you. There will be one final shot before the next level for what it's worth, so we can replace anything which we used on this planet. And yeah, I'm assuming that even if you're playing very light, like I am in terms of grabbing loot, you'll still have plenty of money to buy whatever you need. If you do need any cash, there's this chest here for roughly $750 to the left of the start, just beyond the opening in the ground, as well as a gem all the way over to the left, over a hill. I'd like to bring in Fluff for one more Fluff fact, so let me preempt that by giving a quick rundown on this planet. We need all 4 fuel cells this time. So the first one at the junction once we head down into said opening is at the 7 o'clock position or so. Just keep going down. Down and to the left of the gem you'll find the first fuel cell waiting. It's probably more efficient to just take it up to your ship rather than to the wormhole, which is a ways past the 9 o'clock position of said junction, especially with the double strength thrusters, but it's your prerogative. Speaking of the 9 o'clock position at that junction, return to it and head through, grabbing and carrying a chest worth just over $500 to the left and down to the wormhole if you like. There's also a fuel tank just up from the wormhole to top off your health, but otherwise there's a gem in the bottom left, but it's the second fuel cell, which is in the top left, that we want. So take it to the wormhole and dive in yourself. For what it's worth, if you do want a bit more cash for whatever reason, at the 3 o'clock position of that first junction is a gem and radioactive if you immediately go down, and going a bit farther to the right down the next tunnel is another radioactive, but assuming you jumped in the wormhole, this will put you in the bottom rightmost area of the map where we need to go up and around to get the fuel cell and take it back to the wormhole. Jump in one more time from there to pop out at a junction. There's a gem and replacement ship to the right. We're going left where there's a chest for $299 if you go up. We want to go down and hug the floor to the left to grab the 4th and final fuel cell we need, taking it back to the wormhole we just came out of. Then from the wormhole, now just go up through the tunnel to get a fuel tank for your health. There's a gem to the left of that for what it's worth, but we're continuing over and to the right to hit the Golden Warpship piece wormhole. So that's the game plan. So as we're executing that to the best of our abilities, Fluff, how about one more Fluff fact about Solar Jetman?
I showed you how to warp ahead on the 8th planet to the game's hidden level in level 13, but purportedly there was a planned 14th planet. While there's no data for that level, players can sort of access this would-be planet by inputting the password KBHNBBDBKLBB, which, in the absence of data for that planet, drops you in the first level's Golden Warpship part area before you subsequently go to the Cyber Zone. Speaking of codes which do weird things in this game, you can input 12 M's in a row for the password to go to a Bizarro version of Planet 5 with a Bizarro horizon view of Planet 4 named U, followed by a copyright symbol. Not to mention a Satan-friendly amount of cash to spend and Blaze's IRJ. Go through the motions and you'll find yourself on level 12 within a few seconds. So not a bad password for those looking to complete the game quickly or those who just hate inputting complicated passwords.
Very good point, Fluff. Thank you very much. Yeah, not much to have to remember in terms of passwords. If you can't remember yours, 12 M's in a row is as good as anything else in this game, as mentioned. Nice shortcut, ultimately, to the final stage of the game. To be completely kitted out on top of that. Still got a bit of fuel to collect here on the 11th planet, the penultimate planet. If you think the gravity is bad here, just wait till we get to that final planet. In the 12th one. And then that's going to have a fun little maze section on top of it. There's a lot going on with the final planet in the game. And then, as mentioned, once again, we will be showing you the secret planet right before we finish this run. Thought that'd be better than just kind of tacking it on at the end. Kind of like when they used to run the Pro Bowl after the Super Bowl and just no one cared at that point. Not a perfect analogy, but still. Nonetheless. And then there is a final boss here in Solar Jetman, so we will have a Gary sighting before all is said and done. Just using the gravity here and the weight on top of that with the fuel to just kind of inch back and forth down that corridor there. One more fuel though. I don't know why 12 levels, just thinking about it. I keep coming back to it. It's already a very long game. I think 10 would have... It's a nice even number right there. I mean, 12 is also a nice even number. I guess I meant to say round number, but still. Alright, I digress. Enough fuel. Let's grab the penultimate Golden Warpship piece, and then the bonus stage on top of that too, and... You know, seemingly, based on Fluff's fact, it seemed like they were trying to fit in even more planets. Yeah, the Golden Warpship piece for this one isn't too bad. We do have, I think, a laser turret to deal with, but it's one which we can take out. Just wait until we show you that bonus planet, the 13th planet. The planet itself is pretty straightforward, but the Golden Warpship piece for that is arguably the most difficult in the entire game. But we'll talk about that once we get there. Let's focus on the business at hand right now. Keeping the height advantage over this, taking down the cannon. And another one here, since you just topped off your health with that fuel tank, you can afford to take a couple shots from these vulnerable laser cannons / turrets. Just realized we never actually ended up using our smart bombs. Oh well, don't get to bank it for next time, but we have more than enough money to replace all of our goods. As mentioned, there is one final shop, which we can stop off at, or will be forced to stop off at before this final planet. Looking good. What are we missing now? Just, I guess, that little piece in between the fin at the bottom and the thruster. Why break tradition here? Let's break the ship one more time. Maybe on the bonus stage we'll try it with the pod and that alternate timeline. What's the color scheme this time? Purples. Yeah, no new items to be purchased in the final shop, but yeah, just the full assortment of everything to spend our money on. I recommend having one of each of the items which we used in this stage here. So basically, another smart bomb, another military bullet system, and a double strength thruster, as the gravity is once again very nasty on the final planet. Final proper linear path planet. Alright, last chance to make some purchases. Can't take the money with you, so just spend it all. Again, smart bomb, military bullet system, and the double strength thruster. And in case we didn't make this obvious throughout the course of this game, yeah, you can only take one special weapon, secondary weapon, one augment to the ship itself, and one upgrade to your normal bullets. But 72 gravity, absolutely ridiculous. And it's a fairly decent sized planet, but the good news is, as this is the final planet for our run, we don't care about money or anything besides fuel cells at this point. So once again, as mentioned, one last time taking the smart bomb, the military bullet system, and the double strength thruster. The latter is a necessity on the game-leading 72 gravity of this planet. Just ridiculous. Yes, all we care about are the fuel cells and the last piece of the Golden Warpship, of course. So from the start, go right and down, hugging the green rock formation. And then if you keep hugging the wall, actually it'll lead you up past that wormhole right there and up to a fuel cell. Minding the supergravity there on the left. Bring this down, and by this stage you should be an old pro when it comes to the mechanics here in Solar Jetman, even against some crazy 72 level gravity of this final planet. You should be able to teach your own class on astrophysics after playing 12 planets of this game. There's the first one. So now we're going to jump in the wormhole, putting up that shield, and then sometimes you gotta put a little distance between yourself and that wormhole so you can actually reactivate it. You want to go out to the west from there. We can use our smart bomb. We might use that for the return trip because we're going to grab a fuel cell over here on the right. Taking out the immediate threats. I'm gonna use the smart bomb here to clear out this little laser gap. It's just safer than trying to risk timing the flight through there. It's a good use of it, so don't worry. Don't worry about trying to conserve it, but yet we do have some water on this one. They're throwing everything at you. And actually, after we've deposited the second fuel right there, we're going to go down into the water, accounting for that backwards gravity, which is easier said than done. And the fuel cell is in a little trough between two ridges. There's a fuel tank to refill your health if you keep going to the dead end on the right. I know I'm gonna probably need it by the time we get over there. Plus it is a dead end, so no reason to leave it. Right there. And then the trough is right down here. Or nadir, if you will. Easy to miss, though, unless you fly down here. So we're going to turn in this, as it, again, acts like a balloon to get us up here. This one's not as difficult to thread versus the, taking some needless damage here. Gonna turn in this third fuel cell back at that wormhole, which we most recently deposited our supplies in. Waiting for these bullets to clear out. There we are. Now we're going to jump in to pop out in the top right area of the map, where the final fuel cell is just down the hill, guarded by a couple of weak baddies. I'm going to shoot them out. Return this to that wormhole we just came out. Then jump in to show up in the bottom left of the map underwater. So be ready to react to the backwards physics here. And then go to the left and be prepared for Rare to attempt to ruin this game with all their might. First with a massive and undoubtedly frustrating if you don't know where to go maze. So we're in the maze now, follow along, and we're back to kind of the non-gravity once again for what it's worth, but it is follow along. Just have to worry about some light wall effect gravity at this point. May not seem like it at first, but there are some enemies here, so don't dally. Especially since your fuel is probably running low at this point, just like ours is. From the start, you generally want to go left and down to the lower left corner. Once you get down there all the way, then you want to hug that first right wall which you come to. And that's a good rule, actually, just this one right here. Just keep hugging this wall. So we're going to follow this around now, and eventually you'll arrive at the bottom of the maze. If you could see it kind of zoomed out, but... And then just keep doing this as you pass a bunch of short line walls. Just keep hugging this right here, but sticking to the bottom. Probably in dire straits right now, just like we are with our shield, but so now just keep hugging that bottom, and you're going to see all these panels up above you. Just keep going until you hit one which is kind of jutting up from the floor right there. That's your cue to go straight up. And right between these two, there will be a fuel tank right there. Could not have come at a better time. And just keep going straight up. And then split these two walls right here, and then right in the middle, the entrance to the final Golden Warpship area right here. And this final Golden Warpship pieces room has a hodgepodge of the enemies and obstacles we've encountered to this point, so just shoot them all up, use any smart bombs you still have at your discretion. Can't use them after this. Taking out, obviously, all the enemy-producing bays right there. No reason to leave those, unless, again, as Fluff mentioned, you just really want a challenge at this point in the game. Don't worry, we've got one more coming up, actually, as, well, we'll get there in just a second. Let's make it a point to get this final warp ship piece back to the wormhole here. And then as we deposit this, actually, the Golden Warpship is now complete. Destiny summons. But just very quickly, since I thought it would be laying the tack on again, that bonus level that Fluff mentioned earlier after the ending, thought we'd do a very fast overview of it here before we do the final area of this game. So, again, as Fluff mentioned, take the warp by flying straight up and to the right at the start of level 8. I used our password after I finished the game from level 8 because I was curious, but level 13 is relatively easy and plain. Makes you wonder why it's even in the game. Once you beat it, again, you get sent to level 12 where, once again, you can't buy any items. So there's no point in collecting any of the chests or radioactives on this level, but with that in mind, we just want the fuel cells. So from the start, at your mothership, go left and down into the opening, and keep dropping with the brown and then green formations to your left. Once you get to the brown formation beneath the small green one, you'll find the first fuel cell. There's a wormhole just above it on the other side of the green island, so drop it in there. Next, you want to go left and over a larger green landmass, dropping in the first opening to get a fuel cell and bring it back to the same wormhole. After that, you want to go to the right from the first opening we came from, dropping into the straight down opening to get to the third fuel cell, which you should bring back to the same wormhole as, unfortunately, it's the closest one and the most efficient. So yeah, gotta taxi this one a little ways, so. Clearing out the turrets before we risk anything here. After you deposit this in that same wormhole, then we're going to actually hop into it ourselves. And hate when we do that, then we gotta ride all of the wormholes once again. See if we can't do it this time, yeah. Nice little, and now brain's not working. It's at the end of a very long run of this game, in case you couldn't tell. We might just need to go back to the mothership at this point. Yep. Alright. That's alright. We'll tag back up at the mothership. No shame. Still haven't lost a life, even in this alternate timeline. Right here. Alright. 5th time's a charm, whatever it's been. Alright, so now jump in the wormhole after you deposit that one to find yourself in a small chamber with a single gem, so ignore that and jump back in the wormhole to be deposited in the southeast of the map. Go south and around the landmass beneath you when you come out for the final fuel cell, which you should take back up to that same wormhole. Now it's probably faster to jump back in, getting deposited outside of the initial original wormhole and drop down and to the left, hugging the right side of that large brown landmass. So that's what we're going to do. Trade out your ship there at that point for a new one, just like we did. Unless you feel like going back to the... I mean, you could also just tow it if you want, but follow that green landmass around until you find the Golden Warpship piece area. Now, I alluded to this earlier, without any smart bombs, which you just won't have at this stage in the game. This is definitely the most difficult Golden Warpship piece chamber in the game, as, yeah, there are 4 laser turrets lined up at the bottom, making threading them without your shields, carrying the heavy warpship piece, extremely difficult. I find your best bet is to not overthink it and just kind of get a nice drift going, as you can see. If you manage to deposit the piece in the wormhole, you'll find that they've spotted you all the other warpship pieces. You get one final cyber zone, and then, yeah, it's off to level 12, so... yeah, not a bad trade-off, I suppose, outside of that stupid stretch with the laser turrets. But anyway, and I enjoy that color scheme right there, the silvers or grays, if you will. I don't know, it's something different. Not as bad on the eyes as some of the puke colors, but yeah, you can see much more difficult with the pod, which is why we never do it that way. Just a reminder. But yeah, again, this will take you to level 12 But let's get back to our timeline, back to our game. After you deposit the final piece, get ready for one last attempt to ruin this game from Rare. Remember all those items and or lives you worked to stock up and preserve over the course of this game, all gone. You've got one shot to survive a Gradius-style, side-scrolling shooter level, as you have 0 shields and just a couple hits will kill you. And should you fail, you'll have to input your last password to redo Planet 12 again from the top. So here we go. I find that you don't always necessarily want to shoot out these little meteorites or whatever that are coming at you as they split, and then sometimes that just... Certainly it creates more projectiles, but sometimes they can actually deflect more towards you than away from you, so... Also don't want to stay too far to the back left of the screen because in some cases they come from there as well, so... Just kind of stay in the back third of the screen. I think it was the same rule for Gradius actually, but we have no shields either, so any hits we take are going to do a lot more damage here. It's kind of lame though. It just kind of feels like Rare had this side-scrolling game that they only ever got to the proof of concept stage. They decided it was garbage, but the Stamper Brothers still insisted that it had to be used somehow, so they kind of forced it on Zippo. And yeah, just basically this is what we've been collecting pieces for the entire game so that we could do this. Bit of a letdown, but one thing to mention and be aware of is that when the screen is scrolling up and down specifically, if you're trying to go in that direction to get away from a meteor, so if the screen's scrolling down and you're trying to go down, you'll find that just by virtue of that combination, your ship will not move as quickly as you might expect, so makes it more difficult to get out of the way of certain meteors in some cases. And took a hit right there. You can see how much damage just one of those meteors does to us. But yeah, just a reminder to give yourself obviously as much time and distance from these meteors as possible. But anyway, about 2.5 hours into this class, it's finally time to go to him. Gary, take us home.
It's Scary Gary's Boss Beaters. Alright, the final and only boss after a very long journey here in Solar Jetman. Unlike the scrolling level which just preceded this boss, you are safe on the far left side of the screen. Actually, the safest place is on the far left side of the screen to give you more time to react to the projectiles being fired at you. It's important to note that you can scroll the screen up and down to some extent. You don't need to just wait for the boss to bob up or down to get them in position for some of those lower eyes. There's no real secret to this boss though. The main thing is just to play defensively and prioritize dodging the projectiles, making sure you never get trapped between a few coming at you. If you want to just wait and start firing at the eyes until the boss is in, or retreating to its farthest position to the right as it slowly works back and forth left and right across the screen, that's a good strategy to keep you a bit safer. Keep it up though, dish out enough damage to take out each of the 5 eyes, and congratulations, you have beaten Solar Jetman!
Thank you very much, Gary. Might be a record for the longest time we've gone in a class before going to him. I'm sure I've said that before, but... One last eye, and we just took another hit. It's gonna be close. There it is. Not the best ending, but we've definitely seen a lot worse here on Video Games 101. Time to put up those feet. You've earned this one, class. Put your feet up as well. And there's whatever that thing is jumping around on our dash. Federation of Space Loonies. That was a long one. That was a difficult one, but a fantastic game that, again, as I mentioned at the top of this class, escaped me for many years. And there you go, Steve Pickford right there. Music by Dave Wise. I'm just reading the credits at this point. It's been a long class. Forgive me, class. But yeah, if you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to enroll in Video Games 101. We do one of these classes every single week in the same spot. Love to have you enroll. Click that like button too if you don't mind. Really does help us out to make future classes for you. and leave a comment. Are you familiar with this game? Have you played it ahead of this class? Maybe you're one of the folks who actually requested it. In that case, thank you very much for turning me on to this excellent title right here. Big thanks to all my TAs as well, by the way. I want to get that out there for helping me through this one, but that is our time this week. We will see you next week in the same spot for next week's class right here on Video Games 101. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and comment on this video, and click subscribe if you haven't already, as this seriously helps me to keep making great content for you. And check the description of this video to see what song is playing right now.